Hi everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful week. Today's module is going to focus on ability testing. So we'll be talking about both academic aptitude testing as well as achievement testing. And this content comes from your Hayes textbook, chapter 10. So when we talk about ability testing, there are some specific focus areas within counseling that deal mostly with ability testing. So if you're working in a clinical mental health setting, you may not find yourself interacting with a lot of ability testing. However, if you are a counselor working in a school or working in career counseling or at a university, you might find yourself interacting on a regular basis with different types of ability testing. So counselors working in these academic settings or working with individuals facing academic and career-related decisions often work with ability testing. And when we talk about ability testing, there are two main forms of ability tests. So we have our aptitude test and our achievement test. And we're going to talk in more detail about each one of those. We'll start first with assessment of aptitude. So when we talk about aptitude, aptitude is generally thought of as an ability to acquire a specific type of skill or knowledge. So aptitude testing does not assess if a skill or if certain knowledge has already been achieved. It looks at, does an individual have the ability in the future to acquire that skill or that knowledge? And so because of that, aptitude testing is typically used for prediction purposes. So assessment of scholastic aptitude is related to achievement in various educational programs in high schools, colleges, and professional schools. So we often see aptitude testing used in these different environments. With higher education being a prerequisite for entering many higher status occupations, achieving high scores of scholastic aptitude measures can be crucial. So aptitude testing can have important consequences for an individual, and bringing that back, thinking about their life chances. So oftentimes to get into college, into higher education, or to get into graduate school or professional schools, you have to have high scores on scholastic aptitude tests. Now, the problem with that, or the downside of that, is that can become a barrier, and there can be a lot of inequity in aptitude testing because you can look at access to resources, you can look at educational experiences, all of these things that play into someone's ability to do well on scholastic aptitude testing. And that access to those things that might help someone do better on an aptitude test might also increase their chances to get into a professional school or a graduate school, which then increases their ability to enter into a higher status occupation and to be able to see growth or see themselves rise when it comes to social class. So all of those things that give individuals privilege in this area. On the flip side of that, there are individuals that can easily be kept out of these opportunities because of a lack of resources, because of a lack of preparation, or a lack of opportunity to prepare, to be able to go to the study courses for these tests, or to be able to be in a school that has the resources to focus on preparation for these exams. And so there can be a lot of issues with inequity when it comes to aptitude testing. And so it's something that, especially as a counselor, school counselors, university counselors, it's something that you want to keep in mind when you're working with students and looking at their career goals, and what are some of the things that as a counselor you might have to provide or help your students identify, to be able to build up some of these resources or create these resources to give them a better chance to potentially enter into higher education in these different ways, to potentially enter into some of these higher status occupations. So when we talk about aptitude tests and the evaluation of aptitude tests, we're generally using predictive validity. So we want to know for any aptitude test, we want to know the extent to which success in whatever the aptitude test attempts to measure can be predicted from the test results, right? And the hope is that an aptitude test would successfully measure the aptitude or ability that it says that it measures. So for example, the ACT test serves as a scholastic aptitude test to predict success in college. So the idea is that someone taking the ACT and who does well on the ACT, predictive validity would say that if they do well on the ACT, they should also do well in college and be successful in college. So there are some different aptitude tests for higher education, and this is an area where aptitude tests are often used. And they're used for a variety of purposes. So oftentimes, aptitude testing is used to determine academic, athletic, and financial aid eligibility within higher education. It's also used for placing students in courses, and that might be in high school, or it could be looking at an honors program or looking at allowing a student to enter certain majors when they get to college. You also see aptitude tests used a lot in counseling and advising. So again, if you're working in those environments, the information that you get from students' aptitude test scores gives you important information that you can use in advising students in career-related choices or school-related choices. So when we talk about aptitude tests for higher education, there are two major tests, the ACT and the SAT. I'm assuming that most of you are familiar with this because you probably had to take one of these going in before you entered college. The SAT and ACT are approximately equal in their ability to predict college grades. So in studies that have been done, predictive validity on these exams tends to be in the 0.3 to 0.5 range. Alongside of that information, studies have also found that high school grades are often the best predictors of college GPAs. So high school GPAs often can predict a college GPA better than scholastic aptitude tests. However, scholastic aptitude tests are able to improve those predictions. So really, when you're looking at best practices with aptitude testing, you want to combine that information. You don't want to have one source of information. You don't want to rely too heavily on that aptitude test, right? That gives you important information, but you want to combine that looking at GPA or other information. This is another way to be able to maybe fight against some of that inequity that can come from aptitude testing alone, right? When we look at a fuller picture, we often get a better idea of someone's ability. And so that's something that as a counselor, you probably want to advocate for with your students to be able to find ways to look at that full picture. So yes, aptitude tests are important. They give us important information, but it's an incomplete picture when we don't look at some of these other areas as well. There are also aptitude tests related to graduate and professional school admissions tests. So we have the GRE, which was required for admissions into the counseling program. So all of you should have taken that. We have the Miller Analogies test, and then other tests that are used for selection into professional schools, such as the LSAT, the MCAT, and the GMAT. Right? So aptitude testing is widely used for admissions. Now moving over to assessment of achievement. So achievement tests attempt to measure learning that takes place under relatively standardized conditions or as a result of a controlled set of experiences. Achievement tests are designed to measure what has already been learned or knowledge or skills that have already been attained. So in the way that that aptitude testing is used to predict success, achievement testing is designed to measure what has already been learned or what skills have already been attained. So when we're evaluating achievement tests, we're not looking at predictive ability. We're evaluating them on the basis of content validity. We want to know the extent to which the test includes content similar to that which the test takers are expected to have experienced, right? So for an achievement test to be a more valid test, it needs to have content on it that we know has been covered in whatever kind of learning experiences an individual has had. And the test should be able to measure the extent to which the individual learned that information or learned those skills in that learning experience. Now, when we talk about achievement tests, there is a wide range of what can fall into this category. So this can vary from brief achievement tests that are administered by teachers. So for example, the exam that you took in this class would be an example of an achievement test, right? It measured how well you had learned the information that was covered in this class up to that point. Okay, so any kind of test that a teacher gives would fall under the category of achievement test. So it can go from something as simple as that to these nationally available achievement test programs that are produced by major commercial test publishers. So looking at a lot of the testing that's done in the schools, these are exams that have been put together by test publishers that are widely used across the nation. So both of those types of tests fall under this category. So most students will take standardized achievement tests at regular intervals during their K through 12 education. These standardized achievement tests are used often in a diagnostic way to identify the strengths and weaknesses of specific skills in individual students. And this information, this diagnostic information, is then used to be able to select specific types of instruction for those students. So it's able to identify students who might need remedial instruction to be able to put them into remedial classes or set up additional services that might be needed. It also helps to identify students who might need advanced placement. So maybe students who can be placed in honors courses, etc. So counselors are often involved in this process. They're often involved in interpreting the results to the students, to their parents, to teachers and other professionals, and may be involved in making some of those recommendations based on those results. So again, if you're working in a K through 12 setting as a counselor, this is something that you will be dealing with on a regular basis as a part of your job. So there are some widely used K through 12 national achievement tests. So we have the Iowa assessments, the Stanford Achievement Test, the Metropolitan Achievement Tests, and the Terra Nova Test. And your textbook goes into detail about each one of those tests. All of these national batteries tend to be highly reliable, with inter-rater reliability typically exceeding 0.9 per content domain. So overall, pretty reliable assessments. There are also other types of achievement tests. So outside of the K through 12 setting, you might also see achievement testing in college settings or for the purpose of higher education. So you have the college level examination program. You might have the advanced placement program where high school students are able to take these AP exams and earn college credit. You also have the test of English as a foreign language for international students who are looking to study in American universities. And then there are also achievement tests related to adult education. So tests of adult basic education, adult basic learning examination, and the basic achievement skills inventory. And again, your book goes into detail about each one of these assessment areas. So when we talk about achievement, we have to talk about high stakes testing because that is what it's often referred to as. So high stakes testing is a practice that has several different functions. So schools have taken on high stakes testing because they want to ensure that pertinent content and skills that are embedded within the state curricula are learned. They oftentimes what students are learning is mandated by the state, the types of topics, and the state and the federal government want to make sure that students are learning that content and learning those skills. And so high stakes testing is one way that they're able to ensure that that's happening. High stakes testing also provides teachers and stakeholders with information about student performance. So again, it allows them to know how individuals are achieving to be able to make decisions about those individual students. With this information, it can also address perceived problems in education. So individual issues with students, as well as looking at issues within a school or within a local school district. And this ensures that taxpayer funds are appropriately distributed and also provides information to communities about the qualities of their schools. So there's that. So part of high stakes testing is accountability for the schools themselves. All of this is part of the Every Student Succeeds Act that was passed in 2015, which was a follow-up to the No Child Left Behind program. So Every Student Succeeds requires annual statewide assessments of student learning with state-driven performance targets and measures. So individual state departments of education will design their own process and measures within their state for this testing. The goal of the annual assessment is to provide interventions to improve student learning in low-performing schools. So again, that accountability, but then also an allocation of resources so that low-performing schools can increase their performance on high-stakes testing. Now, of course, there's a downside to high stakes testing as well. So one of the negative sides to this type of testing is that individual student ways of achieving can get ignored, right? Students, when they take an achievement test, right, they're tested in a specific way. And so that doesn't always take into account differences in learning. There also tends to be a loss of emphasis on non-tested content and skill areas such as the arts, humanities, physical education, etc. So this is where the controversy comes in of are teachers being forced to teach to the test rather than being able to teach in the way that is best for their students. So teachers have to ensure that specific content and skill areas of high stakes tests are taught at the expense of context-specific learning. So although achievement testing in this way can have some benefits and it's there for a reason, it's why there are reasons why we assess achievement in this way, but there are also some downsides to this type of system within our educational system. So school counselors, again, you're often responsible for coordinating the administration of these testing batteries. And part of your job is also to help with student anxiety and stress levels around standardized testing. So this has become a big issue within the educational system of students experiencing anxiety and stress around these high stakes testing periods. Because they know that there's a lot at stake. And so one of your roles as the counselor is to support students and teachers around these types of testing procedures. Now, outside of the aptitude and achievement tests that we've talked about so far, counselors in high schools and colleges will also work with students who are having difficulties in their coursework or are not achieving academically up to their potential. Right? So you might find yourself as a counselor working in one of these environments, wanting or trying to help students to improve their academic performance. That's especially true for those counselors who are working in schools, because oftentimes any intervention that you use in the school setting has to somehow connect back to academic performance or their success in the school environment. So a lot of times you might be helping students improve their academic abilities. And so another area of ability testing is related to these study habit inventories. And these are often useful in helping students to develop awareness around their academic habits and then to identify opportunities for growth. So this can be a part of your intervention as a counselor to help students begin to see their strengths and their weaknesses, and then to be able to develop skills that maybe they didn't have so that they can be more successful in the academic environment. There are a few common assessments here that are used in this category of study habit inventories, and you'll see those listed here in the PowerPoint, and they're also discussed in more detail in your textbook for you to take a look at. So in conclusion, anytime we talk about ability testing, we are talking about both aptitude testing and achievement testing. And again, this is an area of testing that is most often seen in academic settings, and that counselors who work in schools, in career counseling, or in universities will tend to use on a day-to-day basis, whereas clinical mental health counselors may not be as involved in this area of assessment. So that wraps up the lecture for Chapter 10. There are still a couple more things for you to do to complete this module, so don't forget to do the module activity as well as the Chapter 10 quiz. Thank you so much. Y'all have a wonderful week.